All right, hello everybody. So we've got just a few weeks until the winter holidays, Christmas holidays, whatever you want to call it. And one thing that comes up a lot, not necessarily in consultations, but usually just in conversations, is how do I not undo all of the stuff I've been training for over the year when it gets to the Christmas holidays? Like, we know that at this time of the year, everything slows down, a lot of things stop, a lot of centers are going to close. So you might not even be able to go and train like you were previously. So what can we do to kind of keep skills up and make sure that we go back into the new year not having got significantly worse and having to spend the whole first 3 months just rebuilding stuff you should already be able to do. And I'm going to have good news and bad news about the practicalities and realities of that. But the purpose of this video is going to be to talk about how you can best use the holiday period for what it is, let's say, best for. Not necessarily what you want it to be best for, but how your body would maybe appreciate you would use it a little bit more. So let's just dive into it. Might even try and keep this one shorter than 30 minutes if possible today. The first thing to think about when we get to Christmas is, do you actually need to keep up your training regimen at all? Okay, so there's like some element where you want to be able to keep all your skills, you want to be able to still do all the things that you were able to do, but want is very different from need. So for some of you, you're going to be performers and you're going to have Christmas contracts, and or maybe even, you've got stuff booked in the new year where it's like, actually, I need to be able to perform for this. For others, with athletes I work for, it's usually around the competition schedule. For some people, if there's a competition in February, then you might not have the choice. You need to be able to keep training at a pace that means you're going to be able to perform when we get to this competition. For the vast majority of us, though, this kind of Christmas period, there's nothing to say that you need to be training at this time. And the reason I'm bringing that up is, if you look through like almost every culture in the world, there is some period of time in these people's year where downtime is expected. They go like, yeah, cool, we got to the end of the year. Now we're having a big party, a big festival, a big religious event, whatever it is. And everything changes. Everything's a bit more like, all right, chill out, do whatever you want. Let's all party to varying different degrees. There's also a time in a lot of cultures as well that does the opposite of that, which is all about, like fasting and discipline and stuff like that. And for most of these cultures as well, those times were in history regulated by seasons. So when it was getting really cold, there was no sense in working really hard because all of the land that was available to farm is just dead. And so there was nothing you could do about it. So they didn't necessarily get to choose when their period of just kind of rest was going to be, or their periods of something like famine, where they're going through all the fasting type things for a short period of time. But they did have them. And it seems like that is something that doesn't seem to go away, is the tradition of like one period in the year of hardship and one period in the year of kind of just celebration and kind of enjoyment of life. So when it comes down to it, actually, that's probably something that's pretty important for everyone, to keep going the entire way through the year without ever having a time where you can stop and reflect and just kind of not worry about the day-to-day things that you normally do, is kind of a big deal. And for some people, it's not even Christmas, it's their summer vacation where they spend 2 weeks and it's just literally do nothing. I'm not in contact with anybody. But these kind of things are super important. It might even be important now that the world's getting busier and busier. We might need more than one in a year. But it can be worth looking at the Christmas holiday period as just like, if I don't need to be training, it's potentially a good idea for me not to be pushing myself that hard, to actually just let myself chill out and relax a little bit. And, because you're resting, you're going to see a bit of a drop in the decline in your skills, but there are actual benefits from this extended rest period as well that we might not want to be ignoring. So one of the big ones is how our brain likes to learn skills. So if you're going in every day, working really hard, trying to learn something new at all times, the brain is in what we call a focused mode of learning. And that's where it takes all of the information you show to it at face value and just tries to figure it out right there on the spot. What we also need to have happen is we need to go into this more relaxed state of learning called the diffuse mode. So we spend a while focusing on a skill, and then afterwards, we need to spend a while doing nothing so that the brain goes, oh, hang on a minute. I've got all of these reflexes that actually match what that skill I was just doing looks like. So if you just give me a time where you're doing nothing, I'm going to figure out how to wire up these reflexes so that the next time you go to do that skill, it's going to take less energy. And so, we get that through our training cycle where you do some heavy work and then you have maybe a rest day or something like that. Once you finish resting, then you go back into training. And so that happens in a kind of short-term period. But over the long-term period as well, it can be good to have, 3 weeks where you're doing absolutely nothing or just not training the things that you normally train, so that your brain could go, oh, hang on, actually, I've been missing a whole bigger part of the picture. When you're not doing those movements, when your brain is not in the kind of danger mode of having to actually perform all the time, it gets to sit and think about the movements you're doing and figure out, all right, how could I do these in a more efficient way? So having a break, while you may find the day that you come back or the week that you come back, things feel a little bit slower. Instead of thinking that as you've just got worse, think of it as your brain's figured out how to do things differently. Now it needs a short period of time where it actually puts that into practice. So then you can look at that week of things are worse, but it's not going to stay worse. It's actually going to jump a level above what it would have been if you had just kept training the entire year through. So that's kind of the big one. Is the first thing is, do you need to be training? And then the second thing is, if you are adamant that you want to be doing training, then we got to figure out how that's going to work. So when you're in your regular kind of routine in the year, even if it doesn't feel like it, there are going to be loads of habitual and kind of ritualistic things that you've got used to. That means it's actually easier to get the motivation to train because you don't have to think about all the variables. So even if you're not the kind of person who trains at the same time every single day, you know what time breakfast is, you know what time you wake up, you know what time you're going to sleep, you know which people you're likely to be running into throughout the day. And so when you go, I wonder, should I just go and train now and do a workout? You don't have to think about those. Those are already solved. And so you've only got the problem of like, am I going to have time to get back for this? Or do I need to prepare the stuff for this meeting tomorrow? There's maybe about 7 or 8 things that you might need to think about. Whereas there's about 50 things that are just sorted. When you get to the Christmas period, your routine, even if your routine doesn't change and you're like one of those, you're working in some kind of retail where it's just the same, horrible 12-hour days all the time. Everybody else's routines are changing. So then suddenly you're having more interactions with people who want to meet up when they wouldn't have normally wanted to meet up. So basically, just once we get to this holiday period, so many things are going to change, regardless of whether they change for you, that actually training, getting the motivation to train and going through that decision-making process of what you're going to do becomes way harder. So if you don't put a game plan in ahead of time, it's probably very unlikely that you're going to manage it. So we'll start with just how do you even get a workout in the first place. So this is going to be most useful for the people who cannot stop training. So that's like your Christmas contracts or your competitions, or if you're on a circus degree program, maybe you've got assessments in January, and it's not going to be good for you to go into that just feeling like you've done nothing for almost a month. So the first thing that we need to figure out, I mean, basically, we're just going to go through a list of what are all the conditions of things that we need to decide. So first thing, if you normally go see your cousins on Christmas Eve, even if that's just a short part of the day, anytime you've got like a fixed block of stuff, mark those down as days where it's unlikely that you're going to be able to get things done. Because remember, even if it's only a half day that you need to take out, the chances that somebody else then suddenly wants to hang out or something else gets in your way on that other half of the day is much more likely. So writing down all the days that are just out of the question, and then for any of the days that it is possible, figure out, write down how many days minimum do I want to train, and then just literally block them out in the calendar. So make sure that you've got it blocked in. So then when somebody does say something that's like, sorry, cannot, I'm going to cancel plans here, there, and everywhere just to be able to make the schedule work. That's if you absolutely guaranteed have to get that training done. What I would actually recommend, though, is if you're not in the category where you need to be practicing your same skills or same routines, it's probably a good idea to be looking at what could you do that isn't what you normally do. So if you're normally training aerial, could you say over the Christmas holidays, actually, I'm just going to do acrobatics. Doesn't matter how good I get, doesn't matter how far I get. I'm just going to train a bunch of skills, play with it, have fun with it. What you'll find is that can actually make this diffuse mode of learning, which I was talking about before, where you spend the time doing nothing and your brain starts making your movements more efficient. If you actually add something that you're not used to doing and start learning something else at the same time, that can actually accelerate, and you can end up getting much, much better at the thing you usually do, because you're starting to learn other movement patterns that your brain can then relate back to the thing that you like to do. And the other beauty of that is if you do feel like you want to meet up with some friends and stuff, it's usually pretty hard to convince somebody to come and do a hardcore workout, strength training thing, or trapeze training session. That's all about focused learning rather than having fun. If you're on the holiday period and you're just like, actually, you want to go bowling, play football, let's try archery or something like that, you're more likely to get other people who are in the mood to do those kinds of things. So knowing that could actually be beneficial for you rather than doing the same thing that you're used to is, again, another just kind of nudge in the direction of, do you actually need to still be doing that kind of circus training? So basically on the actual physical side of things, that's the crux of everything I got. If people have questions or anything like that, do feel free to throw them in. But I'm much more leaning towards encouraging people not to do too much training over the holidays, and rather start to enjoy different things. Have a period of time where you're actually having fun, because that will make it much easier for you to go into the new year kind of psyched up and ready to work a bit harder. In my own case, I actually go to the extreme of that. I try to have so much fun over Christmas that I'm seriously bored of it by the time we get to New Year. And so for the first couple of weeks, I'm kind of thinking like, oh yeah, cool. It would be nice to learn some new things when it gets to January. By the time it gets to New Year's Eve, I'm like literally screaming for it. So the enforced rest is also good to serve as a motivator for getting, hitting it harder on the other side. But then the other thing that can be really useful for the holiday period is spend a little bit of time actually just reflecting on everything that you already did. So in circus particularly, I noticed that people are really terrible at collecting useful data on their training. So, you might have goals of like, I want to be able to get a switch by March. I want to have a 1 minute handstand away from the wall, and you don't put a time frame on it or something like that. Um, the less specific your goals and targets are, the harder it is to figure out whether you were training in any kind of a useful way throughout the year. And your goal might not be training for specifically learning skills and getting better and stuff. It might just be for fun. But I'm willing to bet that all of those people who just train for fun aren't watching this video anyway, that's titled, how not to lose your skills over the Christmas holiday. It's the people who say that they are committed to actually improving and getting better over time, yet they're maybe not going as far as they possibly could be. If you're not really setting any goals, and if you're not collecting any data on how much you are progressing, then it's easy to either just assume that things are fine and you don't need to change anything, or what's much more likely is that you assume you're just not good enough because you're not getting as good as you thought you were going to get. But given that you didn't actually write how good you thought you were going to be down, then it's also hard to know if you're even correct about that. So once you get to the Christmas holidays, I recommend, if you haven't been writing things down the whole way through the year, then make a plan to start by next year. So what we want to do once we get into the new year is start making predictions of how far you think you're going to have progressed by the time you get to what year is it going to be? 2025. So when you get to 2025, you're going to write your predictions of like, I think I will be, if it's skills that you want to learn, I think I will be able to do a 1 minute handstand. I think I will be able to do a meat hook to switch on straps. I think I'm going to be able to lift this much weight on a barbell or something like that. Whatever you think you're going to be able to do it for the year. Do it for half a year, and do it for a month. And then what you want to do is then check in at a month and see if you were at all accurate. Very, very likely that you're going to be incorrect. And if you're incorrect at a month, it's even more likely you're going to be incorrect at 6 months. And if you're incorrect at 6 months, guaranteed you're also going to be incorrect by a year. But that kind of prediction is something, if you want to be serious about improving your skills, which I would argue you need to be getting to that point before you start thinking about how hard you can be training over the holidays. That's the more important bit. If you don't know how good it's possible for you to be in set timeframes, then it's pretty much impossible to say what kind of level you need to maintain things at. So write down, make those predictions for how good you're going to be. Once you get to the next year, then that's when you want to start analyzing it and go like, well, what went well this year? What were my favorite things of the year? What things didn't go well? What do I want to be working on for next year? How am I going to do that? Like, well, what does the plan actually look like for achieving those goals? What obstacles are going to get in the way of achieving those goals, and then how are you going to get around them? All of those things need to be written down, and again, it's hard to do that while you're still training. So when you get to the Christmas holiday and you stop doing your regular training, then that's the point where you kind of get to write stuff like that down. So this was just a super short one, and I only wanted to throw it out there because it comes up every year with talking. People are complaining about how they're going to lose all their skills. So basically, just to summarize, number one, if you have a long period of rest, you are not going to lose all your skills. Your brain is going to work out how to do things more efficiently, and then it's going to require a short integration period of practice where you actually start using those skills more efficiently, and then things should actually end up better than before. So having a kind of long period of rest can be a really, really good idea. Having a long period of rest doesn't mean not doing anything. So trying out other skills, other activities that you don't normally do, that or even the opposite to what you do normally, can be really, really useful, again, to accelerate that learning process, but also just to give you a bit of fun. Having a period of time where you're enjoying things, having fun, makes it much easier to go back into the next period with a higher level of motivation. And in particular as well, if you're going to try out those skills and activities, try and get other people involved. So having good social experiences will also make the motivation easier as well. And then finally, if you're going to have downtime, use it for kind of resting, reflecting. Write down what was good about last year with your training. What did you like? What did you not like? What do you want to do better? And then start making predictions for the next year. Make a 1 month prediction, a 6 month prediction, and a 12-month prediction. And you want to do this every single year. But what you need is every year you need to get your predictions closer to being accurate. The first time you do it, they're not going to be at all. Every subsequent time, you want to be closer to hitting the mark, because the better you are at predicting these things, the better your training is going to go overall. So hope some of that was useful. I'm going to do another video before I stop for Christmas. That's going to be around planning for the new year, starting with a bit of a clean slate, but then nothing more till January. So thank you for everyone who's watching. Do get in touch if you have any questions. If you would like to book a free consultation, you can message me on my Circus Trainer Instagram account, and we can take things from there. So thanks very much, and I'll see you next time.